Right, guys, I'm Sai, and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. This is the Cardiff City stroke championship show where we talk all things championship, all things Cardiff, bit of everything, what to do. There's not a great deal going on, but we got some stuff nonetheless. There's always little bits to talk about, so we'll have a chat. If you've got any questions, if you've got anything particular you want to talk about, whether it's Cardiff related, football related, whatever it may be, let us know, let me know, and we'll get it done. Quick 45-minute show today, because I've got some stuff to do. But yeah, loads of stuff coming up, wicked stuff as well. So Saturday, we've got a new episode of My Story coming out with Welsh boxer, viral sensation, Brandon Scott. Even if you don't follow boxing or you just, like, you would have seen clips of him dressed as Spider-Man doing his workout at his last fight. Eddie Hearn bloody loves him. But it was a really, really interesting show. He's got Tourette's. We talked that. We talked boxing. We talked a bit of everything. Really, really genuinely enjoyable show to record and that. And Brandon was a pleasure for a young man. He got his head screwed on real good. And what else we got? I got a new series coming soon, which is different to everything we've ever done before. Starting very soon in the coming weeks. It's not podcast related. It is YouTube content, but it's not. It is football content, but it's not like anything I've done. Anything. It's exciting. It's going to be very different. So we'll see how people like that. See how it goes. But I'm really looking forward to it. And it kind of goes into my ethos of support local businesses, support local teams, support local content creators, podcasters, whatever it may be. Support local artists, sportsmen, whatever it may be. So please do check them out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, click the bell so you get notifications every time we put a new video out and stuff like that. If you want to become a member, support the channel even more for the price of a cup of coffee. You get all sorts of free content, including a live show every Monday. Patreon.com/Ace Podcast Nation keeps the lights on, as it were. So what do you guys want to talk about? What stories have taken your eye this week? Welcome one and all. I think Cardiff got friendly on Saturday down the Bond, but I think. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, I see a lot of football fans on social media from all different clubs, Cardiff, United, Liverpool, whoever it may be. Like, and people they're getting frustrated. We haven't made any signings. We haven't done this. It's very, very early days. And yes, look, teams are back and they're going to be going on their pre-season tours and the rest of it. So of course, ideally, you want your signings in. And when you see other clubs making signings, you kind of like, what the hell? Like, why are we not doing anything? But I'm sure that there's people working behind the scenes at Cardiff and all these other football clubs to try and get stuff done. But in the Championship, I mean, there's been a few really interesting contract extensions, not being extended, sales. Tom Ince has gone from Reading to Watford on a 2-year deal. I think that's a really good move for Watford. Tom Ince, I think, sometimes doesn't always kind of show how very he's so talented, he's so good. He's had a good career. Could it have been great? Not sure. We'll see. But Harry Winks has nearly gone to Leicester for 10 million. Mate, I gotta say, to me, Harry Winks is a good footballer. 10 million's a lot of money. I'd be interested. I think he went on loan in the Championship. I'm gonna have a look at that, see what he was like when he played in the Championship on loan, because he's one of the he always looks all right, but I never think. Well, when I watch him, I never wow, he's incredible. But then maybe that's the type of player you need in the Championship: hard-working, defensive midfielder. Obviously got a couple of England caps. He's been at he's on loan. He's been on loan at Sampdoria last year, so he's a good player. It's just thought he'd gone to a championship club when he was younger, but he hasn't, by the looks of it. Can't find it anyway. So that'd be interesting. Obviously, he's made 20 appearances in Italy. So he's had a pretty good season in terms of games played and stuff. So it'll be very interesting to see like how he does in the championship, because I think the championship is brutal. 2 games a week. It's very quick. And I think sometimes Premier League players come down and they think it's going to be easy. Like they just think they're going to crack on and, away we go. Yeah, no problem. But actually, I think some of them don't always translate. But we'll see. Reese says, lack of movement, not in regards to incomings, but outgoings. No idea if Mark Harris is re-signed or is leaving. No idea. Have I missed it? Same with Bagan. I think they announced Bagan had left, I think. But I don't know. Jonathan Davis, though, says Bagan and Harris been offered new deals. Nothing signed at the moment, as far as I'm aware. Harris has other options. Not seen anyone linked to Bagan. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a couple of clubs sniffing about Mark Harris, to be honest. Like, I think, whilst I think it's probably the right decision to let him go from a Cardiff point of view, if they need to move on, and I think they need to, there's other players which take priority in terms of the young players, like Isaac Davis and Colwell and people like this. They got to get players in as well. So you've also got to make room for those players. I do think Mark Harris will have no problem finding a club. I don't know if it'll be a championship club, but I definitely could see him playing League One. And look, if he goes and plays in League One and scores a bag full of goals, gets a load of assists, then good, show what you can do if you play week in, week out, is what I would say. If I was advising him, whether he stays at Cardiff or he goes elsewhere, is go somewhere where you're going to play week in, week out, and show what you can do as a footballer. Because I think the problem which Cardiff and other clubs have with these academy players is they're giving them like 5-10 minutes here and there. And I know Mark Harris has played probably a lot more than Ruben Colwell did last season, but it's very difficult generally for academy players to make an impact and show what they can do in substitute appearances and stuff like that. They need to start, don't they? The Fisherman says, evening, what do you think of City playing TNS and Pennebont in pre-season friendlies? I think there's 2 sides to look at it. So one side to look at it is it's good for the people of those areas. It's good for those clubs. I think it will hopefully bring in, if they're away fixtures for Cardiff is away, like hopefully you expect big crowds and things like that. So it can help those clubs a lot, and there can be a bit of buzz and stuff like that. But I would argue that playing like Welsh League sides, is that the best preparation for the Championship when you're coming off the back of a not great season? You've got a new manager. I don't know. They tend to play in these types of games. They do tend to play like fringe players and young players and stuff. Whether that will change, you don't know, with a new manager. Matthew Angel says, what's your thoughts on the pre-season fixtures for Cardiff so far, which they've named so far? Surely we have more than the 3 announced. Yeah, they must have more than what they've announced. It would be incredible short-sightedness to not have more than that. So I think, it'll be what it is, but yeah, if that was the only 3, that would be worrying, wouldn't it? Because like I said, the worry I have is the preparation, because they will not set you up for the Championship season. Reese has got no issues with pre-season friendlies against Welsh Premier League teams like TNS. It's all about easing into the 90 minutes at the moment. The level of opposition will increase as the fitness does. Yeah, and I think that's it. And I think it helps those clubs to have Cardiff coming to them. So I can see it for both ways. But like Matthew said, if they were the only fixtures, you'd be worried. Jonathan Davis says Blackburn and Stoke both been linked to Mark Harris. Yeah, that's interesting. Because Blackburn have been there or thereabouts for the last few seasons now with the playoffs and kind of not quite being able to get over the line. Do you think, would Mark Harris be, would a fringe player from Cardiff be the difference between them just sort of missing out, go playoffs to, I don't know, I don't think so. But You never know, do you? Like a different manager playing week in, week out. You never know what these different manager can do. Different coaching setup, different area, things like that. It can all change very quickly for the good or for bad. My ultimate thing is similar to what I've been saying about Ruben Colwell, is they got to play. Like the age they're at now, they've got Isaac Davis the same. These boys, they got to play week in, week out. So if they're not going to play for Cardiff week in, week out, send them on loan so that they can just play, because that's how you're going to really show what you can do. That's how you're going to get better at the rest of it. So, yeah, for me, it's more. I'm sure there'll be more preseason fixtures and there'll be some sort of tour as well. Like these two coming up, like Will says there, it's for the kids, for the people, local area and stuff. Jonathan Davis said, Balus basically said in an interview he wanted to play some Welsh League teams to take a look at the younger players. He saw first-team players in videos, but knows nothing about the younger players. And yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like whenever they played Tapswell before, they always played like the younger players. Maybe if you've got some players coming back from long-term injuries, you might have them a look. But it's a new manager, and let's be honest, like he's coming over from Turkey. You'd imagine he would have known little to nothing about anyone outside of the first team squad. He's just not going to know anything about. So he needs to have a look at them, and hopefully some of these boys who are not going to play can get out on loan to League One, League Two, non-league, Welsh League, depending on where they are in their own development and ages and stuff. Most important thing is to play. Can't stress that enough. Now these boys got to play. Reese says, sure, pre-season usually starts in July. Mid-July is when the first friendlies are usually played. So I think we're starting early. Best way to get match fit is to play games. Yeah, 100%. Like, it doesn't matter how much pre-season training you do, fitness training, technical training. Like, it can be good to work on the technical plans, the tactical side of things, set pieces, all, especially if they're going to change the formation and stuff like that. Pre-season is great for that. But ultimately, no matter how many like fitness tests and bleep tests and running you do, playing matches is just different. So you have to get those games under your belt in pre-season to be ready. Like you got to be that first league game of the season. You got to hit the ground running. You got to be ready and going, because make no mistake, there'll be a lot of teams in that championship, especially the experienced ones, who they know if you get off to a good start, it's half the battle. Like the first 10 games in the championship season, if you can get off to a really good start, because you're playing twice a week, the momentum is incredible. You see teams go on these mad runs, and then you've got some big teams coming down, Leicester, Southampton. I'd expect both of them to be very good. So it's going to be, it's going to be interesting. Reese says, how does the international transfers work? I read that's why we're so keen on sending youngsters to the Welsh Premier League instead of England due to international transfers. I'm not 100% sure on that, mate. Someone asked about Jesse Lingard's comments on Saudi Arabia. I don't know who it was, so I apologise, whoever you were out there. Jesse Lingard making comments about Saudi is the new place to be, and he hasn't ruled out a move, even though no club out there has been linked to him. So it's the thing, right? Like I talked about this a little bit the other night, is there's two ways it can go, really, for me, like generally speaking, is you could have it like what happened with the China League, whereby they threw a shitload of money at it. They had all these investors who were like paying and signing these big name players. And then after a couple of years, they realized like it was just hemorrhaging millions, if not billions. And they had to change it and bring in like wage caps and more restrictions to try and manage it, because it was just unattainable. The difference with the Middle East and Saudi is, I was talking to someone the other day, there's so much money. They've got so much money. It is literally like a bottomless pit. So like I saw a report about a guy who was supposed to be buying United, and they were saying, oh, he's only worth only worth like 1.7 billion, his personal value. But like these guys, they don't declare their value and their wealth and their businesses and their finances. whereas Sir Jim Ratcliffe, obviously, through Ineos and things like that, does. So you've got a, generally speaking, better idea of what he's worth. Like all these sheikhs and the guys in Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the rest of it, they've got so much money. If Saudi Arabia keep throwing money at people, signings, people will come because there's too much money to turn down. And it'll, like, it started off with like Ronaldo and Benzema and that, and then you get like the Koulibaly and people like this. And then more will start. It's when they start signing players who are in their mid-20s and have got the options to go to like massive clubs, like the biggest clubs around, and they're choosing to go out to Saudi. Now, I wouldn't criticize anyone for going to get the bag, set up their family and their kids for life. My kind of objection to it, or like frustration with it, I guess, is if you're a top Premier League player, all right, let's use Jesse Lingard, right, as an example. I think he's 28 off the top of my head, something like that, 28, 29, right? He's been playing in the Premier League since he was a teenager. He's played for United, West Ham, Forest, whatever. He is a multi-millionaire, especially with his other projects like clothing and all the rest of it. He's a multi-millionaire. He could give up playing football tomorrow and never have to work a day in his life again, and his kids would probably never have to work either. It's like, how much money do you need? But Jesse Lingard's also 29. If you look at it from his point of view, he's leaving Forest. He's on a free. Who else? Like, who's in for him? Let's say, I don't know. There's a couple of championship clubs, maybe some lower league, Premier League clubs. They're in for him. Does he want to be in a relegation fight, or does he want to go and live in Saudi? 29, got a few years left. It is what it is, isn't it? It just is what it is. If they, but basically what I was going to say is, if in a couple of years they do what China did and kind of pull everything back, then it won't end up being much more than what it is now. But if they continue to fund all these signings, all these teams, all these players, and people keep coming, they will end up being like one of the top sort of 5 leagues in the world and stuff like that. They just will. It's just a fact. Like, at the moment, it's not, but it will if they keep putting that much money. And it's when those players who could go to Madrid or United or whoever choose to go to Saudi instead, and they're at their peak. I think that's when there's a problem. When you're signing the Ronaldos, the Benzemas, the Koulibalys, these guys who are 30 plus, and I don't see the problem with that necessarily, but it is what it is. Jonathan Davis says Balut has pulled as many back early as he could to try and take a good look at the players, get an idea of what he needs as well, and get the best possible fitness for the players he wants. It's pretty smart. Yeah, I think, and like Balut had to do that because, like I mentioned earlier, he probably didn't know very much about many of the players, so he needed to get them all in to have a look at them. Also got the bonus of them being back earlier, and they'll be fitter come the season start. But he also needs to make signings however we can try and make them. He's got to make those signings, loans, frees, whatever. But you can't make those signings until you know what you want. And I think, as I've said a few times recently, as a manager, he's going to live and die by the results. So if he's going to live and die by the results and potentially be sacked after X amount of games because he's lost a few, he needs to have his players in. The only way he can get his players in is, right, you just sign the players you want, which Cardiff probably haven't got the budget and financial thing to do. They can't just sign a load of players and then try and move players out. So he's got to have a look at what he's got and see if there's, who's he fancy, who's he doesn't, and kind of go from there. So I think he's made as good a start as he can in terms of what he's trying to do. However, unfortunately, the longer you leave it, the free transfers go, the top loan players go, etc., etc. So it's kind of one of them where you've got to weigh it up, I guess. But I've seen a few kind of like write-ups of people previewing the championship season saying Cardiff might be dark horses because people seem to really like the manager. As someone who follows Cardiff, I would say as things stand, like things can change with signings and stuff like that. But with the squad we have now, we'll be fighting relegation again. Doesn't matter who the manager is because the squad's not good enough. All the better players, I would say the majority of the better players last year have kind of gone back on loan. The likes of Kaba and Kipra, they've gone. Like there's a couple who are still there who did all right, but we need some genuinely quality players. We need some people to need some goals. We need some creativity. We need some pace. We need some bite. Let's have a look. Will says the issue with the Saudi league is no one outside Saudi Arabia will watch the league, irrelevant of who's playing there. But I think that even like there will be some people like these days, I think more than ever with social media, there's people who don't support clubs, which I know for us guys and traditional or guys who've been following football for so many years is weird. But there's people and there's social media accounts with millions of followers who are just dedicated to one player. Like they follow that player, like Ronaldo or Messi or Griezmann, all these different people, Pogba, and they will watch wherever those players go. And so when like Pogba went to United, you had a load of Pogba fans supported United for a couple of years. Same with Ronaldo, and they'll just go to club. Now I get it. They're not the match-going fans and stuff like that. But I think there'll be this year or this next season now, more people than ever from the UK, for instance, will watch a few of those Saudi games in the Saudi league just out of interest to see Ronaldo and Benzema and Koulibaly and the rest of them, just to see, what's the standard like. And if a Lingard goes there or other British players go there, there'll be an interest. And there's I'm sure a lot of Welsh fans, like Kelly's just said there now, people will watch for Bale, say, or watch Madrid games that I wouldn't have watched previously. So it's I think there's something there. I agree with you to a certain point that regardless, people won't watch it. But I think when you break it down, more people will watch the Saudi league this year just from Ronaldo and Benzema and the rest of it. And then if they keep bringing those players in and they start bringing in players who, at their peak, more people will watch. It's natural. But I think it'll take time at the moment. Things, again, can change, can't they? If all the top players start going there because they want the money. So, yeah, some of the prices, by the way, for some of these players are absolute madness. I mean, the Chelsea keeper's gone there as well. I mean, Mendy. Chelsea is selling half their squad to the Saudi thing. Kante's gone, Koulibaly, Mendy. These are first team players, so it is a bit weird. And kind of watching when I'm watching the Championship at the moment, and I'm just kind of looking at who's making signings and who's doing stuff. There's not loads of signings going on at the moment in the Championship. Preston have just released Daniel Johnson and Josh Anomar, two midfielders. I think fairly decent. Daniel Johnson's 30, but he's really he's experienced footballer. That Anomar used to play for Spurs. He's only 26. He came in a short-term deal in January, made 13 appearances. So I'm not saying Cardiff should sign either one. I'm just saying there's players out there who are available on a free. But then, and I quite like Daniel Johnson. Like Reece says there, he's quality, he can eye a pass, he's good set pieces. But Will Balut fancy these players? Will Balut go for proven Championship quality, which I think there is several free transfers who were worth a punt in that regard, or will he go more with players who he knows and he trusts from Turkey or from Europe and try and bring them in? It's going to be really interesting because I think, and I could be wrong, but I think a lot of the time the Championship teams which do well are the ones who make the clever signings. They've got some, good players, obviously, but they bring in like a proven championship striker who scored goals before, or a winger or creative player or a defender, whoever, but they're proven at that level. They've done it in the championship and they've done it to a high level. So it's kind of interesting to see where all these players go, the ones who are being dropped, because I think there's loads of frees out there at the moment. Sunderland signed a PSV defender. Burnley signed someone from West Brom. That was an interesting one. So Dara O'Shea has gone from West Brom to Burnley, which I think, at least as it stands on paper, I think that means Kipri stays at West Brom this year. And look, the way he played for Cardiff last year, I think he deserves to stay. I don't think Cardiff are going to sign anyone anytime soon. And I wouldn't be surprised if... It all depends on how familiar... So there's kind of two aspects to it, I guess. So Baloo, he's either going to go with what he knows personally, or has he got a team of people both within the club who are already there, like the transfer committee, and then his own people who he trusts enough that where they go, right, this guy's really good technically, he's this, he's that, he's been proven in the championship, he's on a free, we think he would be a good signing. Will he trust them enough to do that? Because ultimately his job depends on it. Or will he go with, no, I want these players because I know they can do this, I trust them, I'm familiar with them, etc., etc. It's going to be tricky because it's hard. You just don't know. Like, question is, like Reece says, question is, will Baloo even be aware of some of these players and their quality and these championship players? It all depends how proven he is. How familiar he is with the championship generally. Because if he's like a fan of the championship, he might be aware of the quality of some of these players. But if he's not familiar with the championship and he's only really familiar with the sort of Premier League and whatnot, then it's natural that he's going to go with more players that he's familiar with from Turkey, from Europe. It is what it is. Like, he might bring in a few players from Turkey and everyone will be like, oh, I'm not sure about that, or who's that, or whatever. And they could be quality. You just don't know. And you never know what any manager is going to get out of any player. So I will be fascinated to see what he can get out of the players which are already there, especially, Ruben Corwell, who hasn't done great over the last couple of seasons. Isaac Davis, who's coming back from injuries and stuff like that. Can he get the best out of them? Can he improve them? Can he make them better players and then fulfill their potential? It's going to be really, really interesting. Will says, don't think we're going to sign anyone we've heard of, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There's loads of quality players abroad that we've never heard of. Reece says, I don't trust Dalman in the board. Wouldn't be surprised if we miss out on a few targets because of them being slow to act, and we'll end up with whatever's left. Hopefully Baloo can work with that. Jonathan Davis says, there seems to be loggerheads already in the club. Baloo has his own targets and the transfer committee have theirs, as Dalman has already admitted. And I think Baloo will be more what he knows, which is the foreign market. Yeah, and look, let's be honest, right? Declan Rice is going for £105 million from West Ham to Arsenal. I guarantee you, I could find you a midfielder in Europe or South America who would be better than Declan Rice. Better as a defensive midfielder, better as an 8, just a better all-round midfielder, and he'd probably cost you between 5 million and 30. It's outrageous. The amount of prices that get paid for English players or British players is absolutely just out of this way. It's crazy. Even Mason Mount, got a year left on his contract, has had one of the worst seasons of his career through injury and stuff like that. And Chelsea were asking 70, 80 million. And he wants to go to the point where he's pretty much handed in everything but a transfer request. It's crazy to me. I do apologize. I would not look at my phone normally. But my son is waiting for a taxi, so I just got to keep half an eye on that. So there we go. Indeed. Garen Cole says, according to Dalman a month ago, we are excited with the players that we're bringing in. Supposedly, they've already got a few lined up. Or is that just another load of bluster coming from him once again to get people to get their season tickets? I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a bit of that, like trying to get people to get their season tickets. However, I also think you got to bear in mind that a lot of contracts run out in this week, basically the end of June. So, say for instance, Aaron Ramsey, I don't know when his contract's up, but maybe his contract runs up, at the end of June, 1st of July or start of July. You might start to see some announcements if you're signing frees, and like you see now, last couple of days, a couple of the frees have been snapped up. 30th of June. Kelly says Aaron Ramsey's contract's up, so it's not even up yet. So they can't announce him, they can't sign him because his contract's not up. So yeah, it is what it is. Will says Declan Rice moves like he was wearing a neck brace. Cannot get over how Man City and Arsenal are in for him. Well, I can tell you why Man City are in for him, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. In my opinion, this is, by the way, I think I said this the other day. I think the reason Pep wants him is to play the John Stones role that he played last year, and I think Declan Rice is absolutely perfect for that because of the role he played for West Ham. He was so deep. He was almost like a half defender. So for that John Stones role, he'd be perfect. And then you put Stones on the right of the three who stay back in defence, and it works very well for him. So I could see why they want him. But people seem to be forgetting, everyone's saying, oh, he's going to go to Arsenal and he's going to do bits and he's going to do this. He is so used to playing in his own half in front of the defence. Arsenal don't play like that. They play on the halfway line, and he's going to have to do a lot more of his football under pressure, being pressed in the opposing half. And I'm not 100% convinced that he's the player for that. He might go and do well. Good luck to him. But I don't think it's a guarantee. And like Jonathan says, the English market has always been insanely overpriced. Yeah, it's crazy. I bet you, depending on what Cardiff are able to do in the transfer market, wouldn't be surprised if Baloo is able to go and get some players that some people have never heard of, and they come over and we're like, wow, 100%. There's loads of quality players around Europe. Reese says, the big eight, I'd say, wait for the rest of the league to do all the hard work, scout in, identify him and develop in a player, and then they swoop in and just buy big. Well, yeah, that's it, isn't it? You look at United, they could have signed Haaland for 4 million, but the Solskjaer asked for him, and the Glazers or the people at Woodward, whoever it was at the time, said, no, we'll save that 4 million for someone else, and went and signed Lukaku or something. And then you've got they could have signed Casado for 6 million, and they're going to try and sign him for 80 now. It's mental. Jonathan says, Aaron Ramsey's a strange one, keeps being linked, but his appearances qualified him for an automatic year extension. Yeah, I believe, though, that it's one of them extensions where it's got to be agreed, I think. So, it's an option rather than an automatic year extension, I think. I might be wrong, though. But he played quite a few games last year, which is encouraging. As I said, I don't want to repeat myself with regards to Aaron Ramsey. If Cardiff sign him, great. I think he's a good signing. I think he can do real good things in that number 10 position for us. I think he's what we need, a bit of creativity and a bit of guile. But we've got to have two, if we're assuming we're going to play a 4-2-3-1. And he's going to be the 10. The two need to be young and fit and athletic to be the legs, because he hasn't got the legs anymore. So we've got to have proper players behind him. One who can pass the football and one who can do the donkey work and be the legs of the midfield. Otherwise, we're just going to get overrun massively. But we'll see, won't we? He's been talking. I saw he said the other day, he'd love it. He wants to play for Cardiff again before he retires. So, I mean, it does seem like all signs point to him coming, but we'll see, I guess. 30th of June, his contract's over, so we'll see what's what. Reese says 30th of June. However, we can announce players have signed pre-agreements. Most already come train with their new clubs. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, mate. I have no idea. These players could be on holiday, stuff like that. It's just, you just don't know until it's announced, I guess. Alex says, Yokoe Mate. Will says, Mate's a decent player. I'd be happy if we signed him. Yeah, there's players there. Jonathan Davis says, Ryan Wintle and Reno have got the legs. Yeah, I think possibly. I would question, maybe Ramsey does the job. I would like to see someone. I like Wintle a lot, I got to say. And I do like Reno as well. So I think I would like to see someone in there. Maybe a Norwood or even a Daniel Johnson, someone who's can play that almost like a deep playmaker role, but then also get up and down to support and whatnot. I think I don't disagree with you, mate, at all. So let's have a look what else. So going back to what I was initially saying about Dara O'Shea's gone to Burnley, obviously being promoted for 7 million. It's a pretty good signing, I think. Makes sense for both sides. 7 million is a good price. He can try his thing in Premier League football. And I think from West Brom point of view, Kipri slots in there, and you think, there you go. If I watched Kipri last year playing for Cardiff, no way I'm sending him out on loan again this year. No way. But it depends. They got a bit of money to spend now. Do they bring in another defender to replace O'Shea, or do they go with Kipre and spend that money elsewhere in the squad? I don't know. It's an interesting one. There was this weird thing though that Dara O'Shea had a 8 million release clause in his contract, but West Brom let him go for 7 because they basically haven't got the parachute payments no more, which is mad, but really, when you think about it. But maybe they're trying to help the player out, I guess. Reese says, still think there's a few which could leave. I'd sell Olslop, Vontae Campbell, Waters to begin with. There's a few others we need to be dangling in the shop window. Yeah. And there's one thing I think Cardiff don't always do well is sell. They don't. I think there's players in that Cardiff squad as a whole, on the fringes of the first team squad, in players who went out on loan, blah, blah, blah. I think there's players in that team who you could sell and loan and kind of move out of the squad, who teams, whether it be from the Championship, League One, would be interested in taking. So then I just think, if that's the case, do it. But we just seem to be so slow doing everything. So, yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky. Right, if you've got any questions, guys, get them in now, quick as you can. Just texting my son to make sure he's outside for his taxi. West Brom are in serious trouble, Rishi, right there. The owner took money out of the club, missed multiple deadlines to repay it. The club had to take an emergency loan in January and sign agreements that the money wouldn't go to the owner. Yeah, it's worrying, mate, all these football club owners who are just rinsing the clubs. And then I just think if we're not careful, we're going to see some massive clubs going out of business over the next few years. I worry for Wigan. I think they're in awful trouble. It'd be such a shame if they can't get out of the financial trouble that they're in. I think it would be a real shame, and I feel for the fans most of all. Jonathan says, Waters' confidence was destroyed by Morrison. I wouldn't sell Vontae either. He's very fast, hell of a unit, and if we can get him in, he could be some players. And this is the thing, right? You never know. You could have players who looked awful for us previously, but you put them in front of the right coach, and then suddenly they look like players. I mean, you only look at some of the Premier, look at what Arteta's done at Arsenal. Xhaka looks a different player. You look at United, Rashford looks 10 times what he did the season before. Fred looks better. Who was the other one who he did something with? Aaron Wan-Bissaka looked like he was done at United. And towards like the second half of the season, he was first choice right back. Like with the right manager, a player who looks doomed or looks like he's not good enough can suddenly look a hell of a difference. It's all down if the manager's able to improve these players and get the best out of them. Like Waters' confidence was destroyed. Jonathan said Waters' confidence was destroyed by Morrison. Maybe Baloo can come in, give him confidence, and we'll see a different player. I don't know. Reading, also Garen says, yeah, these clubs, man, they're in trouble. And I worry that we're going to see some big clubs going under over the next couple of years. Look at what Dave Jones did with Jay Bothroyd. There you go. Good shout, Kelly. Like the right manager can suddenly make an average looking player look something special. And then that same player will get their big move off the back of it, go to a different manager, and they never look the same player. It's just this weird conundrum of certain managers can get the best out of the players. Hopefully, Baloo can come in and I'm excited because I think Ruben Colwell and Isaac Davis in particular, as two young players who've got so much potential and who we as Cardiff fans look at and think, they've got something over the last few years. Like these could be the next sort of big names to come from the academy. And it haven't quite happened for one reason or another, injuries or playing time and stuff like that. But maybe he can get the best out of them. Maybe he will see what they can do and get the best out of them. Alex says that if Atete and Robinson can stay fit, they'll get 25 goals between them. I like Robinson. I think he's really good. I'm not 100% convinced on Atete. I think he's shown good parts. I think he works really hard. I do like him. I'm not convinced that he's going to score like loads of goals for us, though. But he reminds me a bit of Gusted. And I used to love Gusted. He was my Rudy. Reese says 22 years old, only played 10 competitive games at club level. His only appearance for us, I believe, resulted in a red card. I don't know who you're talking about there, mate. Sorry. See if I can. I don't. You'll have to tell me. Jonathan says Zahore temporarily looked like he could play under Warnock. Yeah, I mean, look what's happened to him. Like he just doesn't look the same player. It's certain managers. Geraint says, do not mess with the HMRC. Yeah, these clubs, they never learn. Vontae Campbell, right, because I got you, mate. Yeah, look, like, you just don't know, mate, like, what a manager can get. 22 is young. But to have only played 10 competitive games at club level at 22, to me, is a bit of a red flag, like, because he should have played 22, he should have played more than 10 competitive games. But we'll see. Okay. I'm really sorry, guys, but I'm going to have to wrap this up now in a minute. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to get a few questions in. He played 9 games for Dundee, 1 for us. Yeah, let's have a look. Vontae Campbell. Right back. Yeah. So, did he make any... He played... How many did he play for Leicester? 1 appearance for Leicester in the league, in the FA Cup 5th round against Brighton. Made an appearance. But then he made, like you said, 9 for Dundee and 1 for Cardiff. You just don't know, mate. Like, maybe he'll come good under the manager. Maybe he won't. It all depends. The manager, like, it doesn't matter which manager, what club you're at. Managers are under pressure to get results quickly. And what it will come down to is if he thinks Vontae Daly Campbell can be a player for him, he'll play him and he'll give him a chance. He hasn't got time to wait for a player to come good. Because if he loses 8, 9 out of his first 10 games, he'll be gone. So it's like, does he take a risk on players he's not sure on or may come good, or does he get players in that he knows? So at least if he's going to get sacked, he's going to get sacked. Geraint says, any plans for you and Andy to get back together again? Andy is coming on soon to do a show, as is Super Kev, both coming on over the summer. At the moment, there's no plans to bring the AC show back. However, obviously Andy's left the Middlesbrough job, and that was the only reason we stopped, was because he went to be the manager of Middlesbrough Ladies. So maybe if he gets the bug again, we could bring it back as a Monday night show with guests. But obviously that's entirely it's up to Andy whether he might catch the bug again. You never know. But I don't think people quite realised how time consuming it is trying to get a different footballer on every single Monday for a live show. It takes up a lot of time. And that was the reason, like, we couldn't keep doing it, because a lot of those guests, I would say 90% of those guests came from him, a couple from me, and he spent a lot of time trying to contact people and get them on and get them booked in and the rest of it, whilst teaching and then doing the Middlesbrough Ladies job as well. It was just too much, so it was what it was. But maybe, I don't know, me and Andy will have a chat, but he is coming on soon, and Kev is as well. Kev's coming on basically for one last Super Kev Unscripted to kind of say thanks, and then if we ever do, when we get around to doing the live show, like, obviously Kev will be there. Jonathan says the Whittingham testimonial is where I watched Fonte. Decent runner, good tackler, strength, just needs to work on his passing, very raw. And yeah, and this is it though, like, can a new manager wait for someone like Fonte Campbell to develop into what he might be? Because no manager's got time these days. Like, you lose a few games on the bounce, you're under pressure. Lose any more, you're done. So it's, yeah, it is what it is. Will says, even if you did a monthly guest show and then the rest was just you guys talking Championship, yeah, you never know, mate. We'll have to see what's what. Alex says Atete's got a lot more than Gusted. Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I just meant that he just reminds me of him, because I think probably because he just, like, he works hard and he's quite big and tall, and I do like Atete. I'm just not sure he's got the quality to go and get like 15, 20 goals in a season. But I hope he proves me wrong. Like, it's not that I don't like him. It's just that I'm not sure he's up to the quality that we need to push on, if that makes sense. But I do like it. I like his attitude, and I like his work rate, and I like the fact that whether he starts or he's on the bench, he gives 100%. And he always, whenever he came off the bench, I always felt like he looked dangerous, and he looked like he might make something happen. He made defenders panic and stuff like that. Like, they're the players you kind of need off the bench as well, because they cause panic and they cause issues to the defenders, make defenders second guess themselves. So even if a defender's had a comfortable game, you can kind of, just allow it. Okay, let's have a look. What else we got? I'm going to ignore that about the prize race. Reese says, I think NG is too far ahead of him. Collins on the left. I think he needs to go out on loan at least for a bit. Yeah, maybe a short-term loan. I sometimes think that we don't do that enough as well. Like, it's always like a season-long loan, or whatever loan, like a long-term loan. Sometimes I think like a young player could just benefit by going somewhere for like 3 to 6 months, play as many games as possible, especially if you send them at like a busy part of the season. And then, like, they can come back and be in form because they've been playing instead of just being sat on the bench or getting 5 minutes here and there. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Right, my son's in his taxi. Sorry about that, guys. I apologise. Very unprofessional. But he's kids. Let's have a look. Jonathan says Baloo's coaches are far more experienced than Morrison or Hudson, and their coaches, where I think a lot of things could change this season, won't definitely work, but we've got a better chance. Yeah, I think a lot of, can I word this? So, when you look at the backroom staff that Steve Morrison had, for instance, Steve Morrison, not the most experienced manager himself. Mark Hudson, kind of an inexperienced coach and manager. He did a bit, but not that long ago. He'd busy playing. And I think it's there wasn't very many experienced coaches. And I think coaches who've been doing it a long time can often get a bit more out of players because they know little subtle tricks, little subtle things they can do to get the best out of players. So it'll be interesting to see what the new manager and his coaching staff can get out of some of these players. Maybe he turns Tete from a raw, dangerous-looking striker, someone who I think looks all right and good, or definitely offers something to the team, but I don't see him scoring loads of goals over a season. Maybe they can improve that. Reece says it seems all the coaches keep getting let go when we bring new managers in, but we keep Tom Ramasout. So Tom Ramasout, mate, all I can tell you about Tom, I've never met him. I don't know him personally, never spoken to him. But every single person who I've ever spoken to him, from Derek Brazil to Mark Hudson to Darren Pearce, to all these different people I've spoken to, they all say the same thing. He's an absolute outstanding coach. And I think that's why he keeps getting kept on, because he is so highly rated by people, even outside of Cardiff, that if Cardiff let him go, he would be snapped up instantly. He's very, very highly rated. So I think that's why he keeps surviving. Tommy Tornado, welcome back, my friend. Says can't have the Jacks doing the double again. It hurts too much. Yeah, it's painful to watch. I've never turned off so many derbies before the game's finished as I have in recent years. I think even when I did a watch along, I ended it because I couldn't. It was painful. It's just embarrassing and just makes me want to bang my head against the window. Alex says, true, I take a mid-table finish and a win over the Jacks this season. I would take a mid-table finish and just not having the double done. A draw will do. Kelly says, I would like to see Ollie Tanner step up. Yeah, I think there's something there with Ollie Tanner, but it's like, how long do Cardiff wait with these guys? Like I obviously talked about recently, Ruben Corwell, and I effectively said, if he's going to be the backup to Aaron Ramsey, then they should keep him, assuming we sign Ramsey, because I think Ramsey's not going to play every single game. So you probably get, like Ruben Corwell, if he stays fit, easily gets like 20 games, 20 starts in a season. I think that's a good amount to push on and show what he can do. If we're going to sign someone else or someone else from within the squad is going to be like the backup to Ramsey in that number 10 position, then loan Ruben Corwell out to someone where you speak to the people and you speak to the team he's going to, and they all but guarantee you that he's going to start week in, week out, because he needs to play and he needs to not be the guy, not be the kid, the bloke who's got a bit of potential to be something great. He needs to show more than just potential. And it's not all his fault. There's game time, there's injuries, there's lots to go into it. And I think Tanner has shown enough. But I don't know. It's difficult, man. It's difficult because not everyone can play. Not everyone can, do everything and stuff like that. Reece says, double with us both in the Welsh Cup, we could easily we could do the first triple. Oh my God, that's painful to think about. Reece also said he thought Tanner looked great in the under-23s and the Wits testimonial, but then when Tanner went on loan to York, he couldn't get in their team. So yeah, does that come down to the manager again? Like, depending on who's the manager, can they get the best out of him? Not sure. Welshie, welcome, my mate. He says it's going to go very well. or very badly with Bulu. The only option really was foreign option, and I think at least we will get some players in. Yeah, I mean, when you look at his record, been to some big clubs, he signed some, like, he's clearly got some really good contacts within the game and within Turkey particularly. Like, he signed some big players, but he also signed some kind of younger players who went on and did quite well. So, like, if he does go, like we discussed at the start, would he go with championship proven on the advice of others, or would he go with what he knows? If he goes with what he knows, I wouldn't blame him because it's his neck on the line. But we might actually get some bargains, and we might find the odd diamond. So I think there's nothing wrong with that. He should use whatever. It's the same as anyone, isn't it? If you go to a job or whatever, like, you're going to use whoever comes in as a manager for any club. They're always going to use the contacts they've got and they're most familiar with, and they're going to go with the people they trust, whether that's his backroom staff or players they bring in. That's why often you see certain players follow certain managers because the manager trusts them. So I'm really fascinated by what he's going to do, and I'm hoping that he's going to do quite well. But like, I kind of do agree with you. I think it's going to go real bad or real good. I don't think there's going to be an in-between. Never is with Cardiff. It's either really shit or really good. Tommy Tornado says, probably talked about this, but thoughts on the Welsh Cup entry? Well overdue. I think I said last year and the year before that I thought that the Welsh FA was missing a trick by letting Cardiff and Swansea and maybe even Newport play their sort of under 23s in the Welsh Cup. Maybe not so much Newport, but like certainly Cardiff and Swansea play their under 23s in the Welsh Cup. I think it gives the crowds will be better for those games, and it gives those players an opportunity to play at a higher competitive level than, because under 23 is just a waste of time. Bring back the old reserve teams is what I say. Jonathan says, I wouldn't read too much into Tanner's time at York. Simple reason is it's just hard for players to fit in if they're not good enough, as it is if they're too good to work. Fucking hell, can't read. Let's try that again, shall we? Jonathan says, I wouldn't read too much into Tanner at York. Simple reason is it's just as hard for players to fit in as it is if they're not good enough, as it is if they're good to work in the team they're in. Yeah, and look, it could be anything, can't it? It could be he maybe didn't settle in the area, so he wasn't really settling into it. Maybe he wasn't happy off the field. Maybe the manager didn't fancy him. It's just one of them things, which is why I said if Ruben Colwell or Isaac Davis and these guys, if they go on loan this year rather than staying with Cardiff, it's very important that Mehmet Dalman and the rest of the board and the people at the club, they speak to these clubs. They don't just farm them out on loan. They've got to make sure that if we're going to loan Ruben Colwell, for instance, right, he's got to go to a club that really wants him and is going to play him, not someone who's just looking to get some players in to make their squad stronger or bigger. Like, we got to be responsible with it. Like, these players are rated so highly by the likes of Darren Pearce and the rest of them who have seen them playing in a week in, week out situation. So if they're that highly rated, you've got to look after them. Does my nut in. Surprised after all the talk, Reece says, surprised after all the talk about how great that Peakney was and the hype after signing him, we let him go. This is the most Cardiff thing ever, mate, isn't it? Will says, Welsh Cup entry won't be first-team players and we can't qualify for Europe, but it'll be great experience for the youngsters. Yeah, and Tommy Tornado says, if we win it, does it go against our tally of 22 Welsh Cups? I'm not sure. In terms of this, like who will play in those games, yeah, I don't think you'll see a great deal of the first team, but what it does do is you can play the youngsters. One player who I've heard a lot about is Ruben Colwell's brother. Is supposed to be very, very good, and he's not. He's only a few years younger than him. But it's getting these players playing, because I just think the under-23s league is just a pile of shit. It's not worth it. I just don't think it's good. But you might see players, the youth players who have come back from injury, stuff like that, who can get a game. And it's a good competitive fixture that can then help those young players playing at that level, help someone who's coming back from a long-term injury get competitive football. Eli King signed a new three-year contract at Cardiff this week. Academy graduate, 20, Wales under 21 as the international. Had a little loan spell at Crewe last year. He's been with Cardiff since he was under 8s. So, he's a proper... he's a Cardiff boy, innit? And we all want to see these kind of players come through. He's made 7 appearances in first team for Cardiff. Again, signed him to a new contract. Is that because he's going to stay with us? Is that because he's going to go back out on loan? This is it. It's interesting. Also says at the bottom of that article about Eli King that Cardiff have offered contracts to Mark Harris and Joel Bagan, which I'm sure they announced a few weeks ago that Joel Bagan was gone. So don't know what's changed there. Right, to finish up. Well, she says, not sure about the Welsh Cup. We don't try in the Cups lately anyway. Also, we can't have the best of both worlds. FA Cup all day for me and Europe through that. We did get to the final recently, remember? Yeah, that was painful, wasn't it? 2 finals at Wembley in close succession. The Liverpool one is the one that haunts me. Because when Ben Turner scored, I thought our name was on a trophy. And it was just brutal. So the FA Cup final against Portsmouth is just so drunk. And even after we lost, because I didn't expect us to win, and even after we lost, it was just a great day. Even though we should have won, I just had a wicked day afterwards. But the Liverpool one, maybe because I really have got a quite substantial hate of Liverpool as well. And obviously went into that game expecting us to get absolutely trounced. And then Ben Turner equalises, and I am like everyone else is going nuts. And I'm just thinking the name's on a trophy. This is it. And then I don't even want to think about those penalties. And I went home. We literally just went straight back to the hotel, and I was so sad. Brutal. Which is weird, really, because on paper, when you look at those 2 games, the FA Cup final, we should have probably beaten Portsmouth. I thought I'll never get over some of the squad selections that day, but it is what it is. Kenny Miller, 10 minutes from the end. Why did we start talking about this, guys? Come on, man. Reece, don't talk about other podcasts in my chat, please. Come on, mate. Come on, bro. Ross McCormack spoke about the playoff final a week last Sunday. It seems a lot of the team weren't fans of Bothroyd. Jay is I got a lot of time for him. He came on the channel and stuff. He didn't have to do that. And I've spoken to him a few times. Over text and stuff still, even fairly recently. He's a really nice guy. He's really chilled out. I really, really out of all the players who I've met and I've been lucky enough to meet and speak to and stuff, he's one of my favorites. And it's interesting because someone else has just mentioned another striker who I had contact with. And he was quite the opposite. He was a bit of a fucking prick, to be quite honest. But I'm not going to name him. If you want to have a look in the comments, see who else has been named. Well then, Reece, Warriors Ace Podcast Nation t-shirt to the other pods. Good lads. That's what I like to see. But I wouldn't be surprised, mate, if people within the squad weren't all fans of Jay Bothroyd. He was scoring goals for the team, so they probably liked him from that point of view. But he did have a bit of preferential treatment from Dave Jones because Dave Jones knew how to manage him. And I think wrongly, maybe because I've only had the chance to speak to him as he's retired and he's playing in Japan and he's in his older years, he's matured a bit. Maybe he was different back then, but he had this, I feel, at least from what I know of him, this unfair reputation of being a bit of a troublemaker and a bit of a prick and that. And I know he made mistakes at Arsenal when he was a youngster, but from his time at Cardiff and everything I've heard other people say about him, and then my dealings with him and my conversations with him, both on the pod and off, I can't speak highly enough of him. I got a lot of time for him. And obviously he lives up London way, and I was like, I'd like to get you on the pod. So if you're ever in Cardiff and stuff, and he said next time he's down, he'll try and pop in and come in the studio and stuff. You don't have to do that because he gets paid to do podcasts in London, so you can't fault him. Tommy Tornado says, I like Jay. Jonathan Davis says, a lot of the team didn't like Chopper or Bothroyd, basically called them Jake Jones's golden boys. To me, though, right, I thought Dave Jones was quite clever with them and some others. I'd probably include Ross McCormack in it as well, who maybe had a bit of preferential treatment or whatever, but I call that managing your squad. If you've got a difficult player for whatever reason, just not any of those specifically, just people generally, if you've got a difficult personality to deal with, it's your job as the manager to get the best out of them. If that means you've got to manage them a bit with give them a bit of mollycoddling and build up their ego a little bit and whatever, then fucking that's what you do. And then you get how many goals did Bothroyd and Chopper score together? How many with the stats they use these days, how many goal involvements do you reckon they had between the two of them in those seasons together? Fucking loads. Right. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up there because I've already gone on half hour longer than I said I was going to go. Really appreciate you all getting involved. I really do. Please come back next Wednesday for the championship show and the Cardiff chat. I'll be back tomorrow where we'll be talking a more general football, Premier League, Champions League, or just everything. Transfer Rumours Day and weekly football live Thursdays. It's going to be good. Yeah, and that's a good point. I'll end on that. Robert Boyle makes a great point. Look at the way Warnock dealt with Abdel Tarabat. Got the best out of him. No other manager got as much out of him, especially a championship. That one championship season, that Tarabat and Warnock was incredible. So there you go. It is what it is. Guys, thank you very much for joining me. Please have a look at patreon.com/AcePodcastNation and sign up because that's what keeps the channel going. Join me tomorrow for the Football Weekly. Check out my story on Saturday. And see you soon. God bless.